Have you ever heard of the Lady in Red? I mean, it's only a folktale, but many say it isn't. I myself know it's only a legend, but my friends think otherwise. Eventually, I got tired of arguing with them and decided to settle this once and for all. So when we were all in town for a sleepover, we decided to play her game. Back in the few months before I started high school, I happened to get back in touch with some of my old friends from grade school. It had been years since I'd heard from them, and since I didn't have any other friends, I'd spend most of my time talking to them. The one who started all this was named Landon. We had a lot in common. We played video games, liked the same movies, and most importantly, we were into urban legends and scary stories. I never believed any of them, but he believed there might be some truth to them. He wanted to try one of these games he'd heard about online, out for himself. In order to play, first you need a big building or space with lots of hiding spots, like an abandoned office building or mall. Next, you need a group of 5 people. It must be exactly 5, no more, no less. Thirdly, each player needs a candle, matches, some form of food, and something from their childhood. Lastly, you can't speak during the game, eat or drink, and you must not, under any circumstances, leave the building or quit during the game. Lucky for us, there was a mall not too far away that was almost entirely abandoned, and part of it fit the criteria. There was a problem though. There were only 4 of us. Me, Landon, Seth, and Mikkel. As the 4 of us are sitting there, trying to think of who to bring, Landon's older sister, Mattie, walks into the room. She really doesn't like this kind of stuff, but after some pleading, we convince her to come too. As for the candles and matches, I have lots at home, so we decide to swing by my house before we go. For the last 2, we all decide to bring our own things. Now that our minds are made up, tomorrow night is when we decided to meet up to do it. I was the first one to wake up, so I ran home and got the candles and matches along with some crackers I had for food, and a small blue bunny doll I had when I was little. I also brought my camera to catch the look on their faces when it doesn't work. I hurried back before everyone woke up and waited at the kitchen table diagramming the story so far, as to tell other believers it was fake and nothing happened. An hour or so passes before they all finally wake up and get ready to go. I go over the preparation rules once more, and everyone brings me their food and childhood items to put in a bag with everything else. We were going to head over early to check out the place and make sure it's still there. It was around 5 PM when we finally got there. The building looked forgotten as ever. Better ones were built up all around it. Then you have this sorry piece of concrete, older than time. I used to come here a lot when I was really little, back in the early 2010s, when this place was bustling with life. There were dozens of stores and everything was always packed with people. But that was a long time ago, and the building is almost abandoned except for a bookstore and restaurant or 2. After breaking our way through the almost empty halls, we came to a set of big glass doors. Behind those doors were the remnants of a high-end clothes store that shut down a long time ago. It was 3 floors tall and had tons of walls and shelves. This place looked perfect for their dumb little game. At around 9 PM, we finally decided to get this started. We cleared an area on the floor and I asked how to play, hoping someone knew. Of course, Landon knew the rules. Great. He was the one into it the most. So, I guess the game looks pretty easy to set up, explained Landon. All you have to do is put the 5 toys in a circle, then place their food in front of it. Then each person puts a candle by their toy and lights it, then holds another one unlit. You then light your candle with the lit one by your toy and then walk up as high as you can. One person stands in each corner of the building and hides whilst the 5th person stands in the middle of the candle toy ring. Okay, I guess that's simple enough, I said. I really have no idea what happens next though, but I think the person in the middle of the ring is called the sheep, and the rest of the people have to try and hide from them. But they can't stay in the same place for more than 5 minutes, Landon continued to explain. They also need to keep their candles lit. If it goes out, the person has 13 minutes to get it relit from another candle, or they lose. All you've got to do is stay alive, basically. Okay, everyone, just to recap. Put your toy first candle and the food in this circle. Light your first candle, then use your lit one to light the other candle, I decided to surmise. One person stays in the circle, while the other 4 hide in the corners. No talking, eating, drinking, or leaving the game prematurely. Keep your candles lit, and only stay in one spot for less than 5 minutes. Are you sure you're not making some of this up? The game starts at midnight and ends at sunrise. In order to win the game, you need to be back in the circle and extinguish the candle you've been holding. Then you can leave the building safely. Okay, it's getting to be about midnight, so we're starting the game. We all arrange our things in a circle and get ready to light our candles. We decide the one that should be in the circle is Mikkel, because he is probably the most scared of the game, and if it's fake, he'd feel better about it. We decide if nothing happens in 5 minutes of the starting of the game, we'd all meet back by the circle. We all get ready and count it down. 3, 2, 1. Go! We all lit our candles and got to our corners. We waited about 5 minutes, and I decided to call it a day because of course it's fake and they'd finally get it. I headed back to the circle, only to find everything was gone, except a thin black circle on the ground where the candles had been. No sign of Mikkel anywhere, which was strange. I headed off to go look for everyone, and when I turned around I saw a faint glow coming from another aisle. I rushed over hoping to find one of my friends, but instead I saw something else. She was pale. Very pale. And she had very long unkempt black hair. She was wearing a long gown of some sort that looked like it was made of bloodied human flesh. In her chest was a hole filled with candlelight. I didn't want to believe it. Standing right in front of me was the lady in red. I quietly backed up and ran the other way before she saw me, eventually ducking around some shelves. I needed to find everyone else. I ran back upstairs to where I'd been at the beginning of the game. I'd follow the wall to my left until I found someone. That someone just happened to be Seth. He tried to say something, but I shushed him and gave him my notebook to write what he was trying to tell me. "Where is everyone?" wrote Seth. "I've been looking for an hour, and when I went to go check on Mikkel, like we said, he was gone." "I know, I went too. He was gone also," I replied. "But I did find the lady in red. She's real. This isn't just another urban legend, and I think she's killed Mikkel. Her dress looked like it was made out of blood and flesh. Why did we ever think this was a good idea?" We decided on looking for everyone else in the meantime. I kept going left and he'll go right, and hopefully we'll meet in the middle of the store. I went on my way, and it didn't take long to run into Matty, who was walking around in the area of the store that was still, for some reason, full of furniture. It must have been a break room of sorts. I quickly showed her Seth and I's conversation from earlier, and she agreed to follow me. So she grabbed her candle and we went searching for her brother, who is the only other person I haven't seen yet. We kept going when I tripped on something, which made me drop everything I was holding. I got all my things back together and went to see what had tripped me. To my horror, it was those same spindly black hairs that belonged to the lady. They were everywhere, on the walls, floors and ceilings, all of it spiderwebbing out of the center of the building. It was amazing, since even though I had been paying attention to my surroundings, I hadn't seen any of this since the hair was so thin. It was almost invisible, like thread. I followed some of the lines with my fingers, trying to get across the message that there was something there, but Matty couldn't see it. I mean, it was like 2 a.m. and almost pitch black. The only light was from our dim candles. It didn't really matter all that much, so I shrugged and we kept searching. We stopped to take a break after walking for what seemed like forever, when we heard a loud thud, almost like something big was knocked over. We could pretty much guess who it was, I mean, it could only be 2 people. So we followed the long empty aisles of shelves until we found where we thought the noise came from. What we found there was a dark mass of hair that seemed to be pulsing, with a black goo oozing out of the cracks of this 6-foot-tall pod. Horrified, I stumbled backwards into something. No, not something. Someone. I scrambled to my feet to see who I'd found, and finally, after 3 hours, we found Landon. After seeing it was him, Matty stopped hiding behind a shelf and came over to where we were standing. I showed him my notebook, and he explained he already knew because he ran into Seth. Speaking of Seth, where is he now? I asked. We all looked at each other and realised now we'd have to go find him. We set out into the middle of the store, which had a balcony hanging over the first floor, from where we started the game. Now the only exits in the building were connected to the centre of the first floor, which was where the circle was. The doors were all glass and they took up most of the northmost wall. This allowed the room to be bathed in a pale white moonlight, which illuminated the room enough to see a shadowy figure coming towards us. Then a blood-curdling scream split the darkness as the lady sprinted at us almost gracefully, her steps not making a single sound. We looked at each other, then zigzagged through this maze of boxes and shelves until we thought we'd gone far enough. But another shadow moved towards us. As we prepared for the worst, it walked closer and into my field of view, and to our relief, it was Seth. We all sat down because we've been moving around this building for 5 hours now. This is when I noticed something was wrong. It was dim, for there being 4 candles. I looked around. Matty's candle was missing. She must have lost it when we were running. She has a look on her face that she'd already come to terms with this. There isn't much I can do. The time's almost up, if I counted right. Right on cue, she starts choking and coughing. When they check on her, she's laying in a puddle in the same black ooze from earlier. Then out of the ground and the walls, the hair shoots out like knives, ripping her apart. Landon runs towards the circle of candles in a blind rage. I don't think I'd be able to keep up with him. Seth covers his face and starts shaking violently. He shouts out, "No! This is too far! First Mikkel, now Matty, I quit!" He started for the exit, and I ran behind him trying to stop him. He eventually gets to the doors, flings one open, and he finds an open void where the outside ground should be. The hair shoots out and drags him down into the darkness, leaving me entirely alone. It's been 6 hours. 30 minutes until sunrise. I can survive this. I should just walk around to get my mind off everything. 5 minutes. I'm going to head to the circle now. I shouldn't be too far away. As I get closer, the hair gets thicker and drips with more of the black ooze. 1 minute. I'm standing there, getting ready to end this game. And behind me, I hear a scraping noise. I turn to see what it is. No surprise there. It's the lady. Behind her looks to be Landon running at her. He jumps at her, grabbing a knife from his pocket and stabbing it into her eye. He grabs her throat, but her hair shot out and wrapped around his neck and limbs. Her hair, thin but sharp as razors, cutting into his neck. She rips off his arm, then she takes one step closer. She smiles at him, the eye he gouged out showing a hollow space only disturbed by the pinprick of candlelight showing from her skull. Before decapitating him and flinging his lifeless body to the ground beside her. She stares at me before taking one slow step in my direction. Then another. I finally come to my senses and start running for the circle. Just as I make it, she does too. I quickly throw down my candle and the room explodes in flames that burn blue. I must have passed out, because when I came to, I was laying on the floor and there was no sign of anyone. The sun was still coming up, so everything had a slightly orange hue. I step outside through the door that Seth was pulled out of. This time, the ground was concrete and slightly overrun by weeds. I walked through the parking lot and turn to take one last look at the building before I leave. A chill runs through me as I see the lady in red, but she's not alone. Standing next to her are 4 figures, skinless and mangled, waving from the window. It's been a few years since that happened. I've never forgotten what happened that night. Everyone thinks they just disappeared one night. I've come to realize some things about the game, like how Landon made most of the rules up and why the person in the circle is called the sheep. It's because the lady is a wolf in sheep's clothing, meaning she was probably wearing poor Mikkel's skin. I've also never gone past that building again because last year it was torn down to make space for a new office building. I've gotten on with my life, and eventually everything was somewhat normal. I actually have a younger sister who just started high school, which was about the age when I decided to play the game. She came home from school today and asked, "Have you ever heard a story called The Lady in Red?"